My grandmother, Eileen O'Rourke, never believed in wasting words. When she spoke, it was because silence had finally failed her, and on the morning she died that silence felt heavier than the machines breathing for her. The doctor closed the door behind him and left us alone, and the quiet click of the latch sounded far too final for a world that was supposed to continue afterward. Machines hummed softly at her bedside, measuring things that no longer seemed important, while rain traced slow, uncertain paths down the window, blurring the city outside into something distant and unreal. She lay small beneath thin blankets, her body diminished by age and sickness. Yet her eyes remained sharp, painfully aware. Even as a child, I had feared that look, not because it was cruel, but because it felt like being seen too clearly, as if she were looking not only at who I was, but at who I would become. She lifted one crooked finger and motioned me closer, the gesture deliberate, final. "Connor," she said, using my full name, Connor James O'Rourke, the way she always did when she meant to carve something into my memory rather than merely speak. I bent down, expecting apologies or final instructions, but instead she took my wrist with a grip that startled me, her fingers digging into my skin as if anchoring herself to the moment. "You are not who you think you are," she said quietly, and neither was I. I tried to smile, tried to tell myself that medication and fear were conspiring against reason, but her gaze never wavered. There was no confusion in her eyes, only urgency sharpened into something close to desperation. "Listen to me," she hissed. "I do not have time for disbelief." She spoke then of Aurelian, an empire whose name had been erased so completely that even myths had forgotten it. A kingdom older than borders, older than churches, ruled by bloodlines that carried more than authority. Witchcraft bound directly to lineage itself. Kings and queens who ruled not by symbols or promises, but by agreements with forces older than memory. Powers that listened only to blood, intent, and sacrifice. Aurelian fell not because it was weak, she said, but because it was feared. Its enemies did not simply conquer it, they dismantled it with patience and cruelty. Records were burned, stories poisoned, monuments shattered, and memory itself murdered. Survivors scattered, hid their names, diluted the blood through ordinary lives so it would never be hunted again. The world moved on, convinced the empire had never existed. Her voice trembled when she spoke of the last queen, her ancestor, who fled while pregnant, carrying the final legitimate heir into exile. "Generation by generation," my grandmother whispered, "we forgot on purpose, until forgetting became a habit." She pressed a heavy silver ring into my palm. The spirals etched into it seemed to twist when I stared too long, resisting understanding, as if the metal itself remembered something I did not. "You carry the blood," she said, "and the gift. Ireland still remembers. The land remembers. You must go there. It will recognize you whether you want it to or not." Her breathing grew shallow, uneven. "And if you are very lucky," she added, "you will find someone who can teach you before the power decides what kind of man you will become." "I am sorry," she whispered. Then she was gone. Grief did not arrive all at once. It leaked into my life slowly, disguising itself as exhaustion, distraction, and the quiet inability to care about things that once mattered. I returned to my work at the museum, cataloging artifacts with hands that felt strangely distant from my body. I answered emails, nodded at condolences, and pretended routine could protect me from the weight of her words. At night, I remembered moments from childhood with new clarity. The way my grandmother never let me touch certain locked drawers in her house, the strange lullabies she sang when storms rolled in, the symbols she drew absent-mindedly on fogged glass. At the time, they had seemed harmless, even comforting. Now they felt deliberate, like breadcrumbs left for a future she knew would arrive. But the ring never let me forget. Lights dimmed when I passed beneath them, flickering as if uncertain whether I belonged. Old texts made sense in ways they never should have. I did not translate languages so much as remember them, meanings rising unbidden like half-forgotten dreams. The world felt thinner, stretched tightly over something deep and restless, as though reality itself were only a fragile surface. The dreams came soon after. Vast halls carved from living stone, green fire burning without heat, voices chanting my name in a language that wrapped itself around my bones and settled there. Kneeling figures. A crown I never touched but somehow mourned, heavy with expectation and consequence. One night I woke to the smell of smoke and found a candle burning sideways on my table, flame stretching unnaturally toward my hand. Fear surged through me, sharp and cold, but beneath it lay something far worse. Calm. Understanding. I did not stop the fire because I panicked. I stopped it because I chose to. When I tore the ring from my finger, the flame collapsed, leaving the room dark and silent. My heart raced long after, not from fear, but from the realization that something inside me had answered without being asked. That morning, I booked a flight to Ireland. Ireland did not welcome me. It studied me. From the moment I arrived, the air felt heavy, charged, as if the land itself were holding its breath. Dublin was modern and loud, full of motion and noise, but beneath it I sensed something old shifting uncomfortably. The wind pulled at my coat like a hand testing my resolve, measuring my intentions. In a small pub near Galway, a man named Seamus Byrne stared at my ring for a long moment before crossing himself. "Where did you get that?" he asked quietly. "My grandmother." His expression hardened. She should have destroyed it. Seamus spoke of the remnants, families who never forgot Aurelian, even when pretending they had. They remembered through songs disguised as lullabies, through symbols hidden in embroidery and stone, through rituals passed down as harmless superstition. They watched, waited, and endured, believing the blood would one day return. Later that night, a woman named Maeve Kavanagh took my hand and gasped, tears filling her eyes. "The blood is awake," she whispered. "The king's line breathes again." I did not sleep. Something followed me through the streets, a presence that moved without sound. When it finally attacked, instinct took over. Words burned my tongue, ancient and violent, and the darkness recoiled as if struck by something it recognized and feared. Maeve led me west, away from roads and reception, into land that hummed beneath my feet like a living thing. We reached a stone circle hidden by fog and thorn. "This is a scar," she said, "and a gate." When I stepped inside, the world folded inward. I saw Aurelian as it had been. Vast halls carved from living rock, banners of green and gold, people kneeling not to me, but to what I represented. Loyalty pressed down on me like gravity, terrifying and intoxicating all at once, filling me with both pride and dread. The one who agreed to teach me lived where the land ended, and the ocean tore itself raw against the cliffs. Fionn MacCraith looked at me like a mistake that refused to die. "You smell of inheritance," he said, "and ignorance." Training under Fionn was slow agony. Silence, discipline, and pain shaped each day. He taught me that magic was not command but consent, a negotiation with forces that punished arrogance mercilessly. I learned restraint before strength, patience before power. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into months, marked only by exhaustion, bruises, and moments of terrifying clarity where the world seemed to lean toward me, listening. Under Fionn's guidance, I learned the old symbols, traced not with ink but with intent. I learned how the land answered blood, how stone remembered footsteps, how wind carried truth better than words. Each lesson stripped something careless from me and replaced it with caution and responsibility. "You are dangerous," Fionn told me once as we stood overlooking the sea. "Not because of what you can do, but because of what you might believe you deserve." The Black Covenant came at dusk, descendants of those who destroyed Aurelian. Their arrival felt like rot in the air. Their leader, Alaric Voss, wielded magic twisted by hatred and fear, power fed by resentment rather than balance. The battle on the cliffs burned the sky red. Waves crashed below like 1,000 screaming voices. Maeve fell protecting me, blood dark against the stone. Seamus died buying time, laughing through broken teeth as if defiance itself were a weapon. Rage nearly consumed me. Power surged, hot and intoxicating, begging to be unleashed without restraint, promising finality and justice. Fionn's voice cut through it. "Kings who rule through revenge leave nothing worth ruling." Instead of killing Alaric, I bound him. I stripped his power, unraveled his memory of magic, and left him alive but empty. It was worse than death, and he knew it. Now the remnants gather beneath an open sky, no throne, no crown, only expectation, hope, and fear braided tightly together. They look at me and see what was lost and what could return. I refuse the crown, not yet. Aurelian will not rise as it once did. Power without restraint destroyed it before, and I will not repeat that history. If a kingdom is to be rebuilt, it will be quieter, humbler, bound to responsibility rather than glory. The ring rests on my finger now, warm and obedient, no longer whispering, only listening. My name is Connor James O'Rourke, heir to a forgotten empire, student of old magic, and this time history will not erase us.